There is a sentence that sounds innocent, polite, even mature, but sometimes reveals a much deeper problem. I just wanted to explain. You send the long text. You clarify your tone. You justify your decision. You explain why you were quiet, why you said no, why you changed your mind, why you need space, why you didn't answer in 14 minutes, even though you were clearly online. Modern relationships have turned some of us into full-time defense attorneys for our own existence. And the weirdest part? Nobody officially hired us. But psychologically, this habit is not random. The constant need to explain yourself is often a sign that somewhere along the way, your nervous system learned one rule. If people understand me, they won't leave. That sounds reasonable, but it is dangerous. Because the more you explain yourself to feel safe, the more you teach your brain that your truth is not valid until someone else approves it. And that is where the trap begins. Carl Jung believed that one of the great psychological tasks of life is individuation, becoming who you actually are, instead of living as a reflection of what others expect. But compulsive explanation blocks this process. It keeps your identity on trial. Every decision becomes evidence. Every feeling needs a witness. Every boundary needs a PowerPoint presentation. And let's be honest, some people will still misunderstand you even if you explain it with charts, subtitles, and a dramatic Netflix soundtrack. So the real question is not, how do I make everyone understand me? The real question is, why do I feel unsafe when they don't? And to understand that, we need to go back to where this pattern usually starts. For many people, over-explaining begins in childhood, not necessarily in a dramatic, movie trailer kind of childhood. Sometimes it starts with small, repeated moments. Stop being so sensitive. You're overreacting. That's not a big deal. Why are you upset? When a child hears this often enough, the message becomes internalized. My emotions are not reliable. I need someone else to confirm whether they make sense. This matters because emotional invalidation is not just bad vibes. The CDC Kaiser ACE study, conducted from 1995 to 1997 with more than 17,000 adults, helped show how early adverse experiences are linked to long-term mental and physical health outcomes. More recent CDC data found that 63.9% of U.S. adults reported at least one adverse childhood experience, and 17.3% reported 4 or more. Now, not every invalidating home is abusive. But when your feelings are constantly minimized, your brain adapts. It becomes strategic. It learns. If I explain myself perfectly, maybe I won't be punished. Maybe I won't be mocked. Maybe I won't be abandoned. That strategy might protect a child. But in adulthood, it becomes a cage. Because now you are explaining things that do not require a courtroom. You explain why you are tired, why you need rest, why you don't want to go out, why you said no, why your face looked weird for 3 seconds. At some point, you are no longer communicating. You are negotiating your right to exist. And here is the first open loop. The people who benefit most from your over-explaining are usually the people who respect your boundaries the least. We'll come back to that. First, let's look at what happens inside your brain when you feel misunderstood. In 2003, Naomi Eisenberger, Matthew Lieberman, and Kipling Williams ran a famous fMRI study on social exclusion. Participants played a virtual ball-tossing game and were suddenly excluded. The brain response overlapped with regions associated with physical pain. In other words, rejection does not just hurt your feelings. Your brain can process social exclusion like an actual threat. So when someone judges you, ignores you, or disapproves of your choice, your nervous system may react like danger is near. And the over-explanation begins. You think you are being mature. But sometimes, you are trying to escape social pain. This is why over-explaining feels urgent. It has the energy of survival. You are not calmly sharing information. You are trying to repair a perceived rupture before it becomes abandonment. And if you have an anxious attachment pattern, this can become even stronger. In a nationally representative USM of 5,645 adults, researchers found that 63.5% described themselves as securely attached, while 22.2% were avoidant and 5.5% anxious. Attachment is not destiny, but it does influence how you interpret silence, distance, criticism, and conflict. For an anxious nervous system, misunderstanding feels like danger. For an avoidant nervous system, explaining may feel like exposure. For a secure nervous system, communication is important, but self-erasure is not required. That distinction is everything. Because healthy explanation says, "Here is my perspective." Compulsive explanation says, "Please approve my perspective so I can feel okay." And this is where rewire your brain becomes more than a channel name. It becomes the actual assignment. Rewiring the part of you that confuses being understood with being safe. But here is the uncomfortable part. Explaining too much does not always create more respect. Sometimes it creates less. Why? Because every unnecessary justification signals uncertainty. It says, "I am not fully standing behind this yet, so I need you to validate it for me." People sense that. Manipulative people especially sense that. If someone wants to pressure you, guilt trip you, or move your boundary, over-explaining gives them material. Every reason becomes a handle they can grab. You say, "I can't come because I'm tired." They say, "Just come for 1 hour." You say, "I've had a stressful week." They say, "That's why you should go out." You say, "I need time alone." They say, "So you don't care about me?" Congratulations. Your explanation has now entered season 2. This is why silence can be powerful. Not passive silence, not childish silent treatment, but grounded silence. The kind that says, "I have already communicated enough." This is not arrogance. It is self-respect. And science supports the cost of constantly suppressing yourself. In 2013, researchers followed 729 people over 12 years and found that higher emotional suppression was associated with a 35% higher risk of all-cause mortality when comparing the 75th to the 25th percentile of suppression scores. That does not mean holding in one text message will kill you. Relax, your unread WhatsApp is not a medical emergency. But it does show that chronic emotional inhibition is not neutral. Your body keeps score when you spend your life performing calmness while internally screaming into a decorative pillow. So what do you do instead? You start practicing internal authority. Internal authority means your emotions are allowed to exist before they are understood. Your boundaries are valid before they are popular. Your choices can be real even when someone disagrees. This does not mean you become cold, rude, or impossible to talk to. That is not strength. That is emotional customer service closed forever. It means you stop confusing explanation with permission. Try this simple shift. Instead of saying, "I'm sorry, I can't come because I'm exhausted, and I had a stressful week, and I really hope you understand," say, "I won't be able to come tonight, but I hope you have a great time." Instead of saying, "I know this might sound selfish, but I need space because lately I've been overwhelmed," say, "I need some space this weekend." Instead of writing a 42-line essay about why someone's comment hurt you, say, "That didn't feel respectful to me." Notice what happens inside you after that. Your anxiety may rise. That is normal. You are breaking an old contract. The old version of you believes peace comes from being approved. The new version of you is learning that peace comes from being aligned. This is the real transformation. In 2012, a meta-analysis found a large inverse relationship between self-compassion and psychological distress, with an effect size of R equals AS 4. Translation: people who relate to themselves with more compassion tend to report less anxiety, depression, and stress. Self-compassion is not weakness. It is emotional sovereignty. It says, I can validate myself without turning everyone else into my judge. And ironically, when you stop begging people to understand you, your communication often becomes clearer. In 2007, Lieberman and colleagues found that putting feelings into words can reduce amygdala activity, helping regulate emotional reactivity. But there is a difference between naming your feeling and defending your feeling. Naming is, I feel hurt. Defending is, I feel hurt, but I know maybe I shouldn't, and maybe I'm being dramatic, and here are 11 reasons why I'm not a terrible person. One is emotional clarity. The other is emotional paperwork. So here is the final truth. Some people will misunderstand you no matter how well you explain yourself. Not because your explanation is bad, but because their willingness to understand is limited. And when that happens, your job is not to become more convincing. Your job is to stay whole. The strongest people are not the ones who explain everything perfectly. They are the ones who can be misunderstood without abandoning themselves. So today, ask yourself, where am I still auditioning for approval? Where am I turning my boundaries into essays? Where am I explaining what only needs to be stated once? Because the moment you stop putting your identity on trial, something changes. You stand differently. You speak differently. You choose differently. And people feel it. Some will respect you more. Some will lose access to the version of you they could control. Both are progress. So tell me in the comments, what is one thing you are done explaining? And if this video made you rethink the way you communicate, subscribe. Because the next step is not becoming harder, it is becoming freer.